Hello and welcome to this quick tutorial. I'm going to demonstrate my pattern for teardrop shaped jasmine stitch hanging baskets. This is a free pattern available on my website and I'm going to be doing the larger size. Some familiarity with jasmine stitch would help here, but it's not crucial. The project starts, as many of mine do, with a magic circle. I've linked a video for a magic circle in the description, but briefly, I like to start by holding the working yarn over my hand with the free end pointing down. I wrap it around my two fingers and hold it with my thumb, make an X across the back of my hand, and hold the working yarn firmly with my baby finger. Then I just grab my hook and insert under the top right arm of the X and over the top left arm and pull that loop under. Then work a chain one using the working yarn that I'm holding with my baby finger. At that point you can take everything off of your fingers and you should have a ring that you can pull on the yarn tail to tighten. Now I'm going to demonstrate working the first stitch twice, starting with a different project just because it demonstrates a little bit more clearly on camera. Pull the working loop up to a height of around 2 centimeters or 0.8 inches. Yarn over and pull up a loop from inside the magic circle. Pull it up to the same height as the first one, and now do that a total of 3 times. So yarn over, pull up a loop from the magic circle, and pull it up tall like the first one. Once you've done that a total of 3 times, you will have 7 loops on the hook. Then you're going to pinch the working yarn firmly at the base here. I use my thumb and middle finger. Yarn over and pull through all 7 loops on the hook. Then insert the hook back under the loop that you held back between my thumb and middle finger here. Insert back, yarn over, and pull through both loops, thereby working a slip stitch and then a chain one to finish the stitch. So now going back to our project, I'm going to demonstrate that again. Yarn over and pull up a loop from within the magic circle and pull that loop up tall to around 2 centimeters and do that a total of 3 times. Once you've done that, you should have 7 loops on the hook. Now it's a bit tricky because of the magic circle. Tighten it if you need to. Pinch the working yarn at the base of the stitch firmly, yarn over and pull through all 7 loops on the hook. Go back under that held back loop and pull up a loop and then pull it through both loops, working a slip stitch and a chain one to finish it. So there is our first stitch completed. It's just a puff stitch. Now we're going to work jasmine increases. Pull the working loop up to the same height again, yarn over, insert under the slip stitch you just worked and pull up another loop to the same height. And do that again twice more. You will have 7 loops on the hook. Now yarn over and insert the hook back into the magic circle. Pull up a loop to the same height and then yarn over and do that twice more. This is working the second petal of our 2-petal jasmine stitch or jasmine increase. You should have a total of 13 loops on the hook now, grouped in 2 petals, 1 and 2. So complete the stitch as usual by pinching the yarn to hold it back, yarning over, pulling through all 13 loops on the hook now, insert back under the held back loop. It's a little messy because of the magic circle. Yarn over, work a slip stitch and chain one to finish. So that is a jasmine increase. We're going to work 3 more of those. Always start by pulling the working loop up tall, yarn over, and insert the hook into this or under the slip stitch that you just worked. We're going to start calling that space the eye. It's the space that is just above the loops of the puff stitch or jasmine stitch that you just worked. So 7 loops on the hook, yarn over and insert 3 times into the magic circle and pull up loops for a total of 13 loops on the hook again. Pinch the yarn, yarn over and pull through 13. Now cinch it tight at that stage by pulling up on the working yarn. Go back under the held back loop, yarn over, slip stitch and chain one. Let's work jasmine increase number 3 the same way. Always start every stitch, whether it's a jasmine stitch, an increase, a puff stitch, by pulling the working loop up and inserting the hook into the eye at the base of that working loop a total of 3 times. And then going back into the magic circle again, 13 loops on the hook, 2 petals, pinch the yarn, yarn over and pull through 13, And here's where you can modify the tension by pulling up with the working yarn, however you hold that, and drawing those loops together like a drawstring before you insert back under the held back loop and work the slip stitch. You want that slip stitch to be very tight to avoid gaping eyes. So here are the 3 increases we've worked. This one here, let me just neaten it up a little bit first. This one is actually the first puff stitch that we worked, and we're going to place a marker on the eye of that puff stitch. That will help us at the end of the round. Here is the first increase we worked with its 2 petals, the second one, and the third one. To finish the first round of our circle, we'll work 1 more jasmine increase for a total of 4. So always start by pulling the working loop up tall and working into the eye at the base of that loop. Hopefully you can see that here. It will get easier to see when we're not working into the magic circle anymore. So the second petal of all 4 of these increases has been worked into the magic circle. Pinch the yarn, finish the stitch as we've been doing. Cinch it tight like a drawstring before you reinsert under the held back loop and work a slip stitch. At this point you can tighten the magic circle, although we are going to use it one more time. We're going to finish this first round by working our first regular jasmine stitch. This is worked the same way as the increases, except it has 3 petals instead of only 2. Always start by pulling the working loop up tall. Yarn over and pull up a loop from the eye we just worked, so under the slip stitch that we just completed. And do that a total of 3 times for 7 loops on the hook. Now yarn over and work a second petal into the magic circle again, just like with our increases, so pull up another 6 loops for a total of 13, grouped in 2 petals. Now we're going to yarn over and work another petal into the marked stitch. If you didn't mark it, it should be fairly obvious because it's the first eye of the round. It's the top of our original puff stitch. And when you pull up these last 6 loops, just make sure they're the same height as the rest of them. So yarn over and pull up a loop from that eye a total of 3 times. Now you have 19 loops on the hook. Pinch the yarn firmly, yarn over, and pull through all 19 loops, remembering to cinch that particularly tight to avoid a gaping jasmine stitch eye. Yarn over and slip stitch and chain 1 to finish the stitch. So here we have our circle with its 6-petal jasmine flower in the center. It's pretty seamless, not too bad. I like to now place a marker on the slip stitch I just worked to finish that round. I just place it on the front loop of that slip stitch, and usually the marker then doesn't interfere with working into that space for the next stitch. Round 2 now starts by working 2 jasmine increases, which are just 2-petal jasmine stitches. So pull up the working loop tall, yarn over, and pull up a loop from the eye at the base of that loop, and do that twice more into the same space for a total of 7 loops. Then work a second petal into the next available eye. So just move down the outside of the circle and work into the next eye. You can't go wrong as long as you don't skip any eyes. Hold the loop back, pull through 13 loops, and remembering always to pull it fairly tight before you work your slip stitch. That's 1 jasmine increase worked. Now let's work a second one the same way. Always remember every stitch starts by pulling up the working loop tall. Seven loops on the hook, working into the next eye to add another 6 loops. Total of 13 loops on the hook, 2 petals. Always double check that you have the right number of petals before you yarn over, pull through, and work a slip stitch. Now we're going to work a regular jasmine stitch, followed by a jasmine increase, and we're going to do that repeat a total of 4 times. So remember, a regular jasmine stitch starts the same way. Work your 2 petals, always advancing into the next available eye. In this case, it is the same eye that we worked the second petal of the last stitch into, but that doesn't matter. Always just advance into the next available eye each time you work an additional petal. So working the 3rd petal here, total of 19 loops, 3 petals. Always double check to make sure you have 3. Pinch the working yarn, pull through all 19, draw it tight like a drawstring, and finish the stitch with a slip stitch. If you have any trouble with the mechanics of making these jasmine stitches, I promise it will get easier over time. And if you have any ongoing confusion about these steps, I do recommend my video on the basic Jasmine stitch, linked in the description. Or there are many others online on YouTube to choose from if you prefer. So here we're just working through this repeat consisting of one 3-petal jasmine stitch, which I call a J, and one jasmine increase, aiming to complete that repeat a total of 4 times around our circle. A few notes here as we work our way around. I'm using a linen yarn called Kestrel by Quince & Co. This is a worsted weight ribbon style 100% linen yarn, which is fairly stiff. I find if you're using cotton, linen, or a combination, it's particularly important, I guess because of the lack of stretchiness that these fibers have, to work your slip stitches very tight at the end of each stitch to avoid a gaping hole in your jasmine stitch eyes, which is unsightly in the finished work. My video on jasmine stitch demonstrates pretty clearly how to pull up on the working yarn to cinch all the loops tightly together before working the final slip stitch. But of course, different people hold their hooks differently and their yarn differently. I control the tension of the working yarn with my left index finger, but however it is that you control that, just make sure you put quite a bit of tension on the working yarn to pull the loops together like a drawstring before completing each stitch. Some people advocate using a very tiny hook relative to yarn weight to maintain tight eyes, but I find a hook around 3.75 to 4 millimeters is fine for worsted weight and sport weight. You don't really need to go smaller than that as long as you're aware of cinching the loops tightly together at the slip stitch stage. Remember also, it's not the chain 1 that determines the tension of the jasmine stitch eye, it's the slip stitch. Here I am just starting the last of the 4 repeats. So this is a regular jasmine stitch, a 3-petal stitch. Hopefully at this point you're an expert at placing those 3 petals just in 3 consecutive eyes, pulling through all 19 loops, cinching it tight. I always drop the held back loop at that stage. I mean, not always, but I often do, and I can usually salvage the stitch, but if you can't find that loop and you drop it, you may have to rip the stitch out and start again. So now working our final jasmine increase of round 2. So again, a 2-petal stitch, pull through 13 loops, cinch it tight, and complete with a slip stitch and a chain 1. At this stage, we now have 3 eyes remaining to work into, with the 3rd one being the marked stitch. So we're going to work a regular J stitch with the 3rd petal being worked into the marked eye. So the 1st petal and the 2nd petal worked in the usual way. Now I do remove the marker at this point because it gets in the way. Work the 3rd petal into the eye that the marker was on. Complete the stitch in the usual way. And now we're going to work one final jasmine stitch to complete round 2. So 3 petals. Once the 3rd petal is complete and you finish the stitch, it should be fairly obvious that the round is complete and you have a nice round circle. I do recommend now placing a marker on the slip stitch that you just worked to finish the round. And again, I place it on the front loop of the slip stitch just worked, and it should stay out of the way enough for you to be able to work into that space to start round 3. So there we have it. It's pretty cute. At this point, make sure that you do pull the yarn tail to tighten the magic circle. Let's start round 3. Start, as always, by pulling the working loop up tall and inserting the hook into the eye at the base, the eye that you just completed by finishing the previous round. And we're going to start with a jasmine increase worked into that space and then the next available eye. And then instead of working one jasmine regular stitch in between our increases, on this round we're going to work two. Otherwise it's done exactly the same way. So 2 regular jasmine stitches, and then you'll work another increase, and you'll repeat that a total of 5 times. I'm going to make just a construction note here, which you can ignore, but just for your interest, we need to work 6 increases all the way around the circle, distributed evenly, in order for the circle to lie flat. So we have to do that with every round. The first jasmine increase can be coupled at the end of the round with a 4-petal jasmine stitch, which is actually a decrease, and that will sort of balance it out and it will not count as an increase. So when I'm making this circle, I am using those initial jasmine increases as an increase because I'm just working a 3-petal or regular jasmine stitch into them at the end of the round. But later on, in order to have more flexibility in terms of placing your 6 increases, you could not count that initial jasmine increase as an increase, work a 4-petal jasmine stitch into it at the end, and then you would have more flexibility in terms of placing your increases around the circle, which does become important because you need to stagger those increases in order to avoid your circle having pointy corners. But we won't worry about that with this project because our circle is almost finished. Here I've skipped ahead to where I have finished those repeats. I'm just starting the last regular jasmine stitch, and it's going to have its 3rd petal worked into the marked eye. So removing the marker again and working the last 3rd petal. Completing that stitch in the usual way, and then just like with round 2, we then need to work 1 more regular jasmine stitch to finish the round. And again, I do recommend placing a marker on the slip stitch that you worked to finish that round. It's easier than you think to burn right past the end of the round when you get there. So round 4 is more of the same. You're going to be distributing increases around the circle, this time separated by 3 regular jasmine stitches. So starting with an increase, as we always do at the beginning of every round. And then you will go right into working 3 regular jasmines. We'll zoom through that together very quickly. So with 3 jasmine stitches completed, I just want to show you there's our first increase, and there are our 1, 2, 3 regular jasmine stitches. And with those 3 regular jasmines completed, the pattern now states to work a jasmine increase. And so that's 1 repeat completed when we finish that increase, and we're going to do that a total of 5 times. Now I'm going to skip ahead to where we've completed all those repeats. We've worked our final 6th J increase of the round, and we're approaching the marker. We're going to again work a regular jasmine stitch with its 3rd petal worked into the marked eye. Here I've joined the yarn together sloppily, so it's a little bit difficult. There's the 1st petal of our 2nd last jasmine of the round. and the second petal. And again, I'm not going to here, but I do recommend removing the marker. It just makes it easier to work that third petal. And you're going to have to remove it anyway to move it, so may as well take it off. Cinch that tight. Finish the stitch. Then work one final jasmine stitch to finish off the round. And place the marker on the last slip stitch worked. And now we have finished the circle part of our pattern. You can see here it's starting to get pointy corners where the increases were placed. If we were making this circle bigger, like I said before, we'd be careful to stagger the remaining increases to fix that, but in this project it really doesn't matter. So round 5 starts as usual with a jasmine increase. Here I recommend moving the marker to the eye of this increase once you've finished it. So we really didn't need to place the marker at the end of that previous round actually. So finish that first increase and just move the marker to the eye of that increase once you've completed it. Now this round is much simpler than the previous ones. We're simply going to work 23 jasmine stitches all the way around our circle, no increases. And that's going to have the effect of making the edges of our circle curl up, which for our basket is exactly what we want. So let's work the first regular jasmine stitch together. Three petals completed. Cinch it nice and tight. And then we simply go and work jasmine stitch number 2. You don't have to count these if you don't want to, because the marker will tell you when you're getting to the end. Skipping ahead to where we've just completed jasmine stitch number 22, when we work the 23rd one, the third petal will be worked into the marked eye. So that's how you know you're getting towards the end of the round. The third petal of the last stitch, or the 23rd stitch, should land such that its third petal has to be worked into the eye with the marker on it. So just remove the marker to get it out of the way as you complete jasmine stitch number 23. Once you've completed that stitch, round 5 is completed. Now I don't recommend placing the marker yet. I recommend working the first stitch of the next round, which is always now an increase. So a 2-petal stitch to start round 6. And once you've completed that 2-petal stitch, then move the marker onto the eye you just finished working. And then to complete round 6, just again work all the way around in regular jasmine stitch until you get to the marker. And as you can see, the bottom edge of our basket is already starting to curl up. So always remember, start each jasmine stitch by pulling the working loop up tall and working into the eye at the base of that loop. I'm sure you have that at this point, but it never hurts to remind you. For round 6, you're going to work a total of 24 regular jasmine stitches. Here we are at the end, just completed most of the 24th stitch, just about to work the third petal of it into the marked eye. So remove the marker and work that third petal, complete the stitch, and then I do recommend starting round 7 with an increase before placing the marker back on the project again. So round 7 starts as always with an increase, a 2-petal stitch, and then place the marker on the eye of that stitch once you've finished it. So these increases at the beginning of each round are now making sort of the pointy top of your teardrop shaped basket. And then working all the way around without increases is causing the bottom part to curl up to form the bowl, I guess, of the basket. So the remainder of round 7 is just working all the way around in Jasmine stitch, a total of 25 stitches. Skipping ahead to the end of that, as usual, the third petal of the 25th or last stitch of the round is worked into the marked eye. So you can count if you want to make sure that you've got the right number of stitches, or you can just trust the marker. So just finishing the third petal here into that marked eye, and that completes round 7. Then we can remove the marker and place it on the increase at the beginning of round 8 once we've completed it. So start round 8 by working an increase, a 2-petal jasmine stitch, and when you've finished it, don't forget to replace the marker on the eye of that stitch. So there's our increase completed. Place the marker, and round 8 is worked the same way. Work 26 jasmine stitches around, remembering that the 26th should have its third petal worked into the marked eye. Now I didn't plan this well, and I have run out of that linen yarn, so I've switched to a different project. Round 9 starts with the usual jasmine increase followed by 7 regular jasmine stitches. So I'm just skipping ahead to the point that I've completed the starting increase and 7 regular jasmine stitches to show you how to work a jasmine decrease. This is simply a 4-petal jasmine stitch. So the first 3 petals are worked exactly the same way as for a regular jasmine stitch, but then you advance into the next eye down the line and work a 4th petal, adding another 6 loops to the hook, meaning that you have a whopping 25 stitches on the hook when you're finished this stitch. So here we have our 3 petals, and now we're going to advance into a 4th eye, yarn over, and pull up loops a total of 3 times in that final eye. Again, 25 loops on the hook, and distributed across 4 petals, and it's difficult for me to show you all 4 because they're so scrunched onto the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 25 loops, holding the yarn back tightly now, and insert the hook back under that held back loop and work a slip stitch. It's especially important to cinch this stitch tight or it will have a relatively gaping eye. So that one looks pretty tight. It's a bit weird looking, but it does have 4 petals. Now we're going to carry on with this round by working 4 regular jasmine stitches. So again, going back to our normal 3-petal stitches and working a total of 4. Just going back and looking at our work, I'd like to see if you can identify the 4-petal decrease that we worked, just in case you lose track of how many regular jasmine stitches you've worked. So here I have worked 4. Where is the 4-petal stitch? There it is. I think it's fairly obvious. So that stitch on the right of the screen is the 4-petal stitch, the decrease. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've worked 4 regular jasmines since then, and we're ready to work the next jasmine decrease. So again, another 4-petal stitch. So working these decreases will help the basket not sort of gape open at the front. And these are sort of symmetrically placed, and they are fairly invisible actually in the finished work. So zooming through a bit here, pull through all 25 loops on the hook to complete the stitch, and remember, just cinch it as tight as you possibly can. You really can't pull it too tight. The pattern then says to work 3 jasmine stitches. Here's my decrease, and there's 2. So far I've worked 2. So remember, if you lose track of where you are, you can always go back and find those decreases by identifying them by their 4 petals. So I've got 1 more regular jasmine stitch to work in my 3. So just finishing the 3rd regular jasmine stitch. And now the pattern states it's time to work 1 more jasmine decrease for this round. So I will speed that up a little bit. At this point my hand is getting a little tired. The stiffer and thicker your yarn, the harder this pattern is to work on your hand. It only takes a few hours to work, but by the end of that, my hand is pretty tired. So just, whoops, drop the loop. Just completing that final jasmine decrease with its 4 petals. And now the pattern states to work 7 regular jasmine stitches. And if you've done everything correctly, the 7th regular jasmine stitch here should land with its 3rd petal worked into the marked eye. So there's the first of 7 completed. Skipping ahead, I think we've worked 6, but let's just go back and check. Try to find the 4 petal decrease. There it is. And then count from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I've worked 6 regular jasmines. So I'm in the right place. Now my 7th one will land with the 3rd petal being worked into the marked eye at the end of the round. So remove the marker, work the 3rd petal into that marked eye, and we have completed round 9. One more round left. This final round starts as usual with a jasmine increase, and then you'll place the marker. But this round is a little different because it contains short rounds. So short rounds in crochet are where you pause partway through a round and turn the work around, work a little bit, and then turn it back. This will create in this larger sized basket a bit of a sturdier front to the basket. I find if you don't do this, the basket gapes open when you put heavy things inside of it. So I've designed it that way in order to improve the shape. It's not too complicated, so let's do it together. Start this final round by working 10 regular jasmine stitches after your initial jasmine increase. So speeding up a little bit. There's the first of 10 worked. So work 9 more. And as always, if you lose count, you can easily start counting at the marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're ready to work another decrease. Now I've changed yarns, I've run out of yarn again. This project is a bit of a mess, but hopefully you're getting the idea. It's all about the techniques. So there's 4 petals worked, really messy looking with a sloppy join. It's all good. Finish that decrease. Cinch it as tight as you possibly can and complete it with the chain 1. Now the pattern states to work another 4 regular jasmine stitches. That doesn't look very good, but we're going to ignore that. So here is our first of 4 regular jasmines. Skipping ahead, there's our messy decrease, and we've worked 4 since then, so we're ready to work another jasmine decrease. And putting that on fast forward a little bit. 4 petals complete. Draw through all 4 and finish the stitch. Now we're going to turn the work. So there's nothing complicated here, just simply turn the work around as if you were working back and forth in rows. And then work 2 regular jasmine stitches. So again, start by pulling the yarn up tall and working into the eye at the base where you just turned. And work 2 3-petal jasmine stitches in the usual way. So now I guess the wrong side of the work is facing us and we're going backwards. So that's 2 regular jasmines finished. Now work another decrease. So another monster 4-petal stitch. I find once my hand gets a little bit tired, it becomes easier to hold the yarn back if you sort of hook it around your finger as opposed to just pinching. The pinching motion becomes difficult when your hand is tired. So you can see I sort of hooked it right around my finger, and that works well too. So finishing up that decrease. Now work 2 more regular Jasmine stitches. Then work our second last decrease of the project, just looking back over what we have for a second there. Another 4-petal stitch here. And finally, we're going to turn the work back around so that we're back in the original orientation, and then work another 2 regular Jasmine stitches, so 3 petals each here. I'm really hooking the yarn around my finger there. And the second one is now done, so we're going to finish 1 more Jasmine decrease, so a 4-petal stitch, and that's the last one of the project. I start to get awkward here on camera because the stiff and bulky body of the basket is sort of interfering with my camera equipment. Anyway, that's my excuse. Here I've split the yarn horribly and dropped it. I'm going to try so hard to salvage this so that I don't have to rip the whole decrease out and work it again. Let's see if I can do it. There it is. Oh my goodness, I was determined not to have to rip that out, so I've salvaged the stitch for the most part. I'm going to finish it. It doesn't look quite right at the end, but let's just ignore that. Grabbing the loop and finishing that decrease. So now this round ends with 9 regular 3-petal Jasmine stitches. So ignore the wonky appearance of that decrease and just work 9 regular Jasmines down the line. As usual, the 9th should land with its 3rd petal worked into the marked eye at the end of the round. And here I'm going to count from the decrease with its 4 petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've worked 8, and I know I'm in the right place because the 9th is going to have its 3rd petal worked right into the marked eye. It's always good to go back and count, and it's always good to be able to identify the decreases in your work so that you can go back and count. If you have trouble with that, you could always mark the decreases with a marker. So working the last 9th stitch into the marked eye, and that completes round 10. Oh dear. There we go. All right, so basically our basket is now complete. Again, this one is weird looking with the color change, but hopefully you can appreciate that it's a nice, deep, bold basket. And I've managed to flip mine inside out as I work, so I'm going to turn it back right side in. Here's a different project that looks a little better that I completed earlier. I've got some garlic in it. And now it's time to work a loop at the top in order to be able to hang your basket from a hook. There are many ways to do this. I recommend consulting YouTube if you don't like this one, but here is my simple variation. I'm going to start by pulling up the loop to around 30 centimeters. Basically, you want this loop to be 5 times the length of the loop that you're trying to create. So I didn't pull it up to 30 centimeters, more like 20, and you'll see that my loop ends up very short. So now I'm just going to put the loop that I've created in my left hand, and I'm going to reinsert the hook back to front into kind of the eye of the last stitch we worked. Now this little version of an I-cord starts by wrapping the yarn around the hook by wrapping it over the top of the hook. Then yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook, so work kind of a slip stitch. It's very difficult for the first one. You kind of have to get your fingers involved, but it gets easier. So wrap the loop around yarn over with the working yarn, and pull through all loops in a slip stitch. And mind your tension here. It will make the cord look weird if you have a wonky tension, so just kind of pull it snug if you need to after you've finished each one. It does help as the loop gets shorter to hold it against the cord as the cord grows. So once you actually have a cord to do that with, it helps to kind of hold them together as you yarn over and pull through all loops. So wrap the yarn around, yarn over, and pull through everything. So you'll see I'm kind of creating an I-cord here. I absolutely hate crocheting I-cord, and when I say I hate it, I actually mean that I can't do it. I'm incapable. You're supposed to take loops off the hook and mine fall off and I lose them and I can't stand it. So this is my alternative. So at the end I just put the loop right back on the hook and pull it through in a slip stitch. Then I remove the hook from the loop and insert the crochet hook into that eye once again at the base from back to front, and replace that loop back onto the hook so that I can just pull it through from front to back, and that just gets that loop out of the way and into the back, and I think it creates a fairly sturdy join to the project. Then I just remove the hook, cut the yarn, leaving a tail long enough to wrap it around a bunch of times, so maybe another 20 centimeters, and thread it onto a tapestry needle. So once it's on the needle, then I just put the needle back through that loop that I left hanging and pull the whole business as tight as I can. Now, you may be happy with this. I find that the join is still a little wonky looking. This one isn't too bad, but sometimes it's worse than that. If the loop is longer, it just looks kind of weak and spindly where it's attached to the project. So then I stole this idea from other people who make similar baskets. You can just wrap the yarn around as many times as you want, trying to keep it fairly neat looking. Again, this kind of finishing business is not my forte. This is not going to look that great, but once you're happy, then you just sort of weave it in at the back and you're finished. Now here's another one that I like a little better. It's a little bit longer on that earlier project. It's not too bad. I think that you could probably search around and find a nicer looking cord than that. A real I-cord would be better. You can see that this is not really I-cord. This surface here does look like the nice V's of I-cord, and so does the inside here, but what's in between really looks kind of like the wrong side of something. So it's not proper I-cord, but it's close enough, and you can use this loop to hang up your basket. So I think that this is such a cute project. Here are a couple of the size smalls. The left one is made out of pure wool, which really helps it keep its shape. And the left one here is the size medium that we just made. So I hope this video helped you with this project. Thank you for watching.